January 2015, France shaken by terrorist attacks that horrify the world. Leaders from across the political spectrum march in solidarity with the victims. But one party leader is missing. Marine Le Pen, leader of the Front National, heads a separate march. From its origins as a marginal extremist party, today Marine Le Pen is a figurehead for those disappointed with traditional politics.
Nous sommes ni de droite ni de gauche, nous sommes patriotes.
We're neither left nor right, we're patriots. We work for the nation, at a time when the left and right have abandoned the idea of nation.
On a abandonné la nation.
In a series of interviews, I've been trying to understand what's behind her remarkable rise, what impact the Charlie Hebdo attacks will have on her support, and whether she could in fact win the presidency.
Nous avions prévu depuis très nombreuses années que...
For many years, we have predicted that mass immigration and the development of Islamic fundamentalism on our territory was going to generate attacks, and we're sad to have been proved right.
D'avoir eu raison trop tôt dans ces cas-là.
The town of Hayange, once an industrial heartland and the headquarters of the Mittal steelworks. Today, it's a symbol of French industrial and economic decline. Unemployment among those under 25 stands at 23%. Many are losing hope.
Les gens ont été très en colère vis-à-vis du gouvernement.
People were very angry with the government because they promised to keep the factories open. Now people are just disgusted with politics.
Un total dégoût, un véritable rejet par rapport aux politiques.
Arnaud Manet has been unemployed for 3 years. And like many of his friends, he feels disenfranchised by traditional politics.
En fait, les jeunes se tournent vers le Front National.
The young are turning to the Front National because they have no choice. I think young people also love their country. They love France and they have a certain idea of France, which is represented by Marine Le Pen and the Front National.
I first met Marine Le Pen at the end of last year. She's sparky and charismatic. Her party caused a political earthquake in 2014 when they gained a quarter of votes cast in France in the European elections, which was more than any other party.
Madame Le Pen,
The victory emboldened her in her denunciation of what she sees as the twin ills besetting France: the failure of traditional politics and the ultra-liberalism of the European Union.
Madame Le Pen, what in your view is the cause of France's deep economic problems?
Bon, je pense que c'est d'abord 30 années de mauvaise gestion de l'UMP et du PS.
Well, first, I think it's 30 years of bad management by the right and left-wing parties. But I also believe it's due to being subject to the diktats of the EU.
Sur l'interdiction de poser, nous n'avons plus de président de la République depuis longtemps en France.
We've got European civil servants who get the route map and apply it. So we're on a slope, and when you stay on a slope, by definition, gradually you end up going faster and faster, and we're going downwards, faster and faster.
Nous accélérons vers le bas.
Last year, the people of Hayange took matters into their own hands and voted for a new mayor, Fabienne Engelmann of the Front National.
Merci. Peuple de France, amoureux des traditions, bienvenue. Le port fait partie de notre vie.
One of Engelmann's first acts in power was to introduce a festival of the pig, a celebration seen by many as anti-Islamic.
Moi j'aime mieux le lard.
So I wanted to know what this vegetarian pig lover thought was the solution to his town's problems.
Écoutez, c'est inévitable, il faudra sortir de l'Union européenne.
It's inevitable we'll have to get out of the European Union. We'll have to end everything to do with globalisation. We're a country with a great deal of intelligence, quality and a strong labour force.
On doit accueillir toute la misère du monde alors.
So, do we have to play host to all the world's poor, open our doors, welcome millions and millions of immigrants from Africa? We can't.
Across France, this seems to be a fairly popular sentiment. There are now 12 cities run by the Front National, with 1,500 councillors in power. They even won 2 seats in the Senate to go with the 2 seats they have in the Assemblée Nationale. Mr. Engelmann is clear that it's the party's leader who's central to its appeal.
Je pense que Marine Le Pen est une femme courageuse.
I think Marine Le Pen is a courageous woman, a fighter and a lover of her country, who has a real desire to change things.
Hayange is an example of a town being run by the Front National, but what would France look like if Marine Le Pen was in the Elysée? Her first priority, she says, would be to renegotiate France's relationship with Brussels.
What would be the first thing that you would do if you were elected president?
Nous devons retrouver notre souveraineté territoriale.
We need to regain our territorial sovereignty. We have the right to decide who comes in and who stays in our country, so remove Schengen. Second, regain our monetary sovereignty. We have the right to have a national currency and adapt it to our economy.
And she seems rather unfazed by the shockwaves that leaving the EU would cause.
Some of your policies include nationalisation, they include protectionism. Wouldn't they ruin France?
Je suis en désaccord totalement avec cette analyse. Je pense que c'est précisément les causes.
I totally disagree with that analysis. We have a crisis today. The crisis is that the Eurozone has been the black hole of world growth for 12 years now. There's never been so much unemployment, so much poverty. Those who've governed have made what was once the richest continent in the world a continent that's on the verge of bankruptcy, and it's they who have failed today.
C'est eux qui ont échoué aujourd'hui.
I mean, surely, were you to leave the European Union, the financial shock would be tremendous, wouldn't it?
Oui, je veux dire, je me moque de l'Union européenne.
I have to say, I couldn't care less about the European Union. What I'm concerned about is my country. It's to my country, to the French, that I have a duty. It's their well-being I have to think of, their prosperity and their security. This European Union we see today has been a total failure.
Wouldn't there be enormous losses for the banks if you went back to the franc?
Oui, mais si vous voulez, je pense que l'intérêt des banques est contraire aujourd'hui à l'intérêt des peuples.
I think the bank's interests run counter to people's interests, so you have to choose. I'm for defending people's interests. I'm not here to protect the banks. And if the investment banks, if they go bust, well, just like any other business, then they go bust.
Si elles tombent, comme n'importe quelle autre entreprise, eh bien, elles tomberont.
The Front National's official position is that the French people should be offered a referendum on EU membership, and if Brussels wouldn't give in to their demands for reform, they would advise the country to withdraw. The Front National is not alone in Europe in wanting to stem the tide of globalisation. All across the continent, parties hostile to the European Union are gaining votes and even winning elections. The grip on power of Europe's ruling establishment is being challenged as never before.
Now, you weren't by any means the only either right-wing or anti-European party to succeed in the last European elections. Why do you think these anti-European Union parties are doing so well across Europe?
Well, because they're Euro-realists, because they've seen what the European Union is, because they've learnt lessons from the, I have to say, very poor results of the European Union.
Good morning. Thank you. The Front National, of course, needs allies in the European Parliament, and it has tried to form an alliance with the UK Independence Party, headed by Nigel Farage.
Why has it proved impossible to have an alliance with UKIP?
It hasn't proved impossible. It was Nigel Farage who decided it wouldn't happen. I think he was afraid of losing the leadership. It might quite simply be a question of ego, a matter of leadership in Europe. But it's thinking that doesn't, in my view, measure up. Again, our countries are under threat, and when your country's under threat, you have to rise above your own concerns and construct a single force. There's no more left or right. There are nationalists and globalists. That's the big demarcation line that determines the fate of the world today.
The Front National was created in a time of national humiliation, after President de Gaulle decided to hand back French Algeria in the early 1960s. Then in 1968, some saw the occupation of French streets by left-wing students as horrifying. One former paratrooper, Jean-Marie Le Pen, decided to form his own party, the Front National. It was nationalist, anti-immigration, and attracted extremists from all over the country. Jean-Marie Le Pen himself is notorious for his anti-Semitism. For 15 years, Caroline Fauré has tracked the fortunes of the Le Pen family, and she's in no doubt that the Front National, albeit rebranded by Marine Le Pen, is cut from the same cloth as her father's party.
La vraie différence, et peut-être la seule différence entre Marine Le Pen.
The real difference between Marine Le Pen and her father is that deep down he had acquired a taste for his role as the devil of the Republic, who would shake things up with debates and controversial statements, but never really had any chance of getting into power.
Marine Le Pen est élue président.
When Marine Le Pen took over the leadership of the party in 2011, she immediately decided to distance herself from her father's extremist views.
Marine Le Pen, elle...
Marine Le Pen wants to do better than her father. Her plan is to take power. She has surrounded herself with young technocrats who have the know-how to get her into power.
Pour pouvoir y arriver, même si elle apparaît comme peut-être plus...
Even if she appears to be more moderate than her father, she is in fact more dangerous than Jean-Marie Le Pen. She could get through the first round and one day get more than 50% of the vote.
Plus de 50% des Français.
On the 7th of January 2015, armed gunmen stormed the offices of the satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo in Paris. "12 people were killed, and in the days that followed, a further 5 died in a series of armed sieges. The attackers were Muslims, but born in France. The nation was deeply shaken. Over 1 million gathered in Paris to declare "Je suis Charlie" in solidarity with the victims. After the attacks, I returned to France to meet Marine Le Pen again. In the weeks after the attack, the Front National's ratings improved.
Bonjour, merci beaucoup, Fernand.
And based on current polls, Marine Le Pen would win the first round of a presidential election.
Madame Le Pen, how did you feel when you first heard about the Charlie Hebdo atrocities?
J'ai eu le sentiment d'un immense gâchis parce que
I feel that it's a huge waste, because we knew, rightly, that it would happen. For many years we've predicted that mass immigration and the development of Islamic fundamentalism on our territory was going to generate attacks. And obviously we're sad to have been proved right in this case.
Now, the last time we spoke, it was really fixing the economy that mattered to you most. Has the Charlie Hebdo atrocity changed your priorities?
Non, enfin, nous n'avons jamais considéré.
No, we've never considered the economy was the only subject.
Ça s'est fait connaître depuis de bien nombreuses années.
I think the Front National has made itself known over many years through its fight against mass immigration.
L'Union européenne clairement nous empêche.
The European Union clearly stops us from tackling these threats. It prevents us from controlling our borders. It considers freedom of movement as a higher, almost religious principle.
Opinion polls show that support for the Front National has gone up a bit. Do you think that is connected to these atrocities?
Non, je crois pas.
No, I don't think so. I think the Front National has been consistently gaining support in elections, consistently gaining the people's trust, simply because we have never minced our words, never fibbed, because we've always had the courage to tell the French what the real situation was and what measures ought to be taken, even if these were not politically correct.
Politiquement correct.
Do you feel vulnerable to the criticism that you are exploiting a national tragedy for political purposes?
C'est ça, ça s'appelle l'accusation en miroir.
That's called a mirror accusation. In other words, you accuse the others of what you are doing yourself. That is exactly what they have done. They have used this tragedy to try and prevent any opposing views, and they accuse us of having done that. That's absolutely not the case.
Absolument pas.
In the weeks following the shootings in Paris, tensions ran high. Despite the government's call for moderation, reprisal attacks on mosques and Muslims increased. This mosque on the outskirts of Paris had to have armed military guards to protect the people praying.
Some days after, there are many attacks of mosques in France. Never in the past we have seen some things like this. In only 2 weeks after 7 January, 2 weeks, there are more attacks than all the last year.
This is one of the most socially deprived areas of Paris. Some blame unemployment on mass immigration. Mohamed Enish says many have lost faith in traditional politics.
The big problem in France, it is a crisis economy. If the crisis continue like this, with attentat, without attentat, the Front National become the biggest party in France.
He blames Marine Le Pen for the rise of Islamophobia.
With the father, Jean-Marie Le Pen, he is a bad one for all people. He is bad for the Jews, he is bad for the homosexual, he is bad for the black, for Muslim, he is bad for all. Marine, the doctor, she changed. She decided to put all the heart to the Muslim community, and all his speak, his message is: be careful, French, Islam is danger. Be careful, French, Islam is danger.
In the France of Marine Le Pen, are Muslims welcome?
I'm not interested in knowing what religion someone belongs to. I defend the French people, whoever they are, wherever they come from, whatever their origins, whatever their religion. I don't have a sectarian vision of French society. The only community that exists is the national community.
Since the attacks, the team at Charlie Hebdo have carried on, seemingly undeterred by the atrocities. Working in the office of the left-wing French newspaper Libération, they produced a new edition featuring an image of the Prophet Muhammad on the cover and with a print run of 8 million. The editor-in-chief, Gérard Billard, says he's quietly optimistic that the fear generated by the attacks would provide no long-term help to Marine Le Pen.
At Charlie, we were all scared that this would benefit Marine Le Pen and her party. Luckily, that hasn't happened. I'm convinced that the Front National was hoping to hit the jackpot with these attacks. She went up maybe 1 or 2 points in the polls. But for example, there was a by-election last week in Doubs, and though the Front National got through to the second round, they didn't win.
Although Marine Le Pen's party narrowly failed to win in the most recent by-election, many in the French establishment have told me that she will be the candidate to beat in the presidential elections in 2 years' time. In your heart, are you confident of winning the presidency in 2017?
Oui, je pense qu'on peut gagner l'élection présidentielle, oui.
I think we can win the presidential elections, yes. Yes, because our country is doing very badly. And above all, French people have the feeling they are losing their freedom, losing the possibility of deciding what goes on in their home country. They want to be in control of their country again, be it on economic, monetary, budgetary, territorial front. And one has to admit that only the Front National offers them that option.
And since I first met Marine Le Pen, there's been further evidence of the rise of anti-establishment parties across Europe. In Greece, for example, left-wing Syriza swept to power on a pledge of dumping the austerity that was imposed by Brussels. For Marine Le Pen, this shows that there's revolution afoot across Europe. What does the crisis in Greece tell us about the Eurozone?
C'est clairement, si vous voulez, la révolte des peuples.
I think it's the people's revolt. The people can no longer bear the totalitarian character of the European Union. They have become aware of the fact that democracy no longer exists within the European Union. The Greeks have chosen Syriza to express their anger.
And even though Syriza is a party of the left, you have, in a sense, a bond with them.
Ils ont avec nous un point commun.
We share one common point. We want our people to be free in their respective countries, that it will be the people who decide. This has nothing to do with the left or right wing, it's about being free. Being free is what our civilization was built on. It's the very foundation of democratic government.
Nationalism and political extremism are on the rise across Europe, challenging our very idea of what it is to be European. If Marine Le Pen were to capture the Elysée, well, the ramifications for all of us would be huge. Given that Marine Le Pen is implacably opposed both to the Eurozone and the European Union, if she were elected as President of France, that wouldn't just have a bearing on the future of this great nation, but on the whole of Europe.